here. Hey, what I would say to everybody right away is going into this is welcome to HEX, and we love you. Hey, so with HEX today with this presentation, I am focusing on HEX, 15 minutes or less. I've already burned a moment of that, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and get started, man. We're just going to go through these. Got some slides prepared, normal type of stuff, and and so here's the big thing with HEX: no middleman needed, none, no middleman. And like we talk about the D, no middleman D. All right. So what if you can earn rewards from crypto without giving up custody or trusting a middleman? And that's where we start talking about HEX, right? Immutable code, launched in 2019 by Richard Hart. Arguably the first blockchain certificate of deposit. It depends how you want to define certificate of deposit, but it is definitely certificate of deposit like immutable, self-custody. So it's not something that somebody else holds for you. Only the users interact, and it's really, and this is the hard one. This is the hard one for a lot of people to get over. In HEX, the best thing to do is set it and forget it. Right? It's not for trading. And that doesn't mean that people don't trade HEX. Of course they trade HEX, and we need people to trade HEX. But and we'll talk about product market fit, is more for allowing users with minimal interaction to hold for the long term, right? And what is that all about, right? That's time locking our HEX, right? And, compared to traditional CD ladders, now with how things are set up on the chain, and actually both chains, your potential rewards in HEX, whether you're on the Ethereum chain or PulseChain, is right around what's normal for CDs. The numbers vary on day to day, of course, in TradFi, and they'll also vary within HEX. But right now, HEX is paying about 4% for a kind of like an average kind of APR, right? For those of us in crypto, you're like, man, what's 4% compared to getting 100%, a 10x, 100x, whatever it is that you get? And yeah, this is where this idea of saving for the future really falls down for a lot of people, and they may not be interested in HEX. But for those people who are interested in HEX, what I'm telling you is, compared to TradFi, you get a very, very reasonable type of reward level. And being able to get that reward level over time with price appreciation, you could really outperform. And that's the whole idea. And so in my mind, and I've said this with a lot of people, is time lock staking ladder. A time lock staking ladder. And that is the product market fit. And over time, those who get in earlier do better. And they're the ones that reap the rewards from the system. So how does it work? And it's just this is probably good for a recap for everybody who may have heard of HEX, but maybe hasn't gotten into the staking. And for all you new folks, right? How does HEX work? Well, once you swap for HEX and you have HEX in your wallet, on one of the chains, you can then turn around and stake from 1 to 5,550 days, which is what we call Quattro Cinco. And today happens to be Cinco de Mayo, at least where I am. And some people were saying it's Quattro Cinco de Mayo. On a daily basis, once you have your stake set, you're allocated a certain number of TShares or shares in the system. And because you have those shares, you then benefit from payouts. And the payout is spread against all of those TShares. And the daily inflation is roughly, well, not roughly, I guess it comes close. It depends how you want to talk about it. But it's 3.69%. Over a year, and so there's a constant, and that's why I said it might not be exactly 369, but it's pretty darn close. And so on a daily basis, that 3.69% is distributed, is prorated by day, and we get those payouts plus any penalties. When we're talking about staking, longer pays better, bigger pays better. And you can always go to hex.com to dig into a lot of detail on this. And even ChatGPT and some of the other AIs out there have been already trained on HEX, so you can actually ask all sorts of long, all sorts of good questions out there. And then, like traditional CDs, a lot of people forget this. There is a penalty for early or late end staking. I guess in traditional finance, I guess I haven't seen so much that I could point to for late. You just stop earning. But certainly in traditional finance with a certificate of deposit, if you were to pull the funds out early, you do pay a penalty. That's usually the case. That is usually the case on how these things work. All right, so how does HEX work? You stake. It can be any amount of HEX, but you need to make some decisions about that. It probably needs to be more than one HEX, right? Just to, and then I think a lot of us tend to think of it in terms of 10, 20, 50,000 HEX at a time or more. And of course, if you are a whale, remember we have a broad audience here of people all over the world. Not everybody can bring up, 100,000 HEX as a stake. So you would stake, you're rewarded daily. The longer you stake, the more TShares you get, so the bigger the reward. The bigger you stake, the more TShares you get, the bigger the reward. And then at the end, you're able to close out that stake on time and avoid any penalties or either late or early. All right, scarcity mechanics. Well, HEX inflates at 3.69, and mostly it goes to the stakers, right? It's not most. It goes to the stakers. But here's the thing with the 369, there's an edge case there that a little bit of it actually never gets paid to anyone because there are stakes out there that have never ended or even get accounted. But I won't go into that detail. So we can just say that 3.69% goes out to stakers. But the OA holds a very large staking position. And to our observation, is not a selling address or series of addresses, and that results in even more low public inflation. Right, it's not a lot coming out to people, even though I feel like it's important and good. It's not a lot coming out to the general public, and that result is we are in the beginnings of what I call a supply squeeze on the market. It's scarce. Now, it may not feel that way to a lot of people, but that's how it is. I mean, we just are not getting the units on the market. It's certainly not coming from stakes at this point. Some people might say, well, what about the past folks? Yes, there are people who have earned in the past and they will cash out their rewards. But on a long time frame, HEX just became much, much, much more rare. And when I say a long time frame, I often speak about HEX in the frame of mind that it's a 15-year cycle, right? Why 15 years? Because it is based on staking, and staking goes out to 15 years, and we have stakes that are set up anywhere from a few days or a day all the way up to Quattro Cinco. All right. So liquidity and volatility, right? So I just mentioned that stakers are now, in public anyways, not the OA, are getting less HEX than they had in the past as far as rewards. But also on the market, we've seen a steady decrease in the amount of HEX that people are willing to put up for sale. And these are rough numbers, but something around 500 million HEX available on the market. It ranges as people add and take away liquidity. Right, so that's a very low number. It used to be a bit higher, over $1 billion at one point. The tight liquidity means that we're in a situation where we can see some prices move pretty quickly, right? In either direction, and so the scarcity plus low sell and possibly high buy pressure really could create a asymmetric upside. I mean, it will surprise you. I think that could be the case, right? Because if all of us decided we were going to start buying and taking the HEX off the market, sure, somebody would sell, but that's how markets work. What you'll see is that volatility go way up, and volatility is the price we pay, right, for these astronomical gains. All right. important point, and then I got some visuals I'll show you here, is that TShares do get harder to earn. Just in general, they get harder to earn. Now, why is that? Because you only get so many TShares, and not everybody gets maximum number of TShares. But the T-share rate goes up on a daily basis, usually on a daily basis, sometimes 4 or 5 times a day. And because the rate goes up, to get the same amount of T-shares that you had in the past, you either have to add more HEX in or you have to stake for longer, you know? And so this is what we've been seeing day over day, is that the T-share rate goes up. And in fact, as a avid staker, even when my stakes end, I cannot get the same number of T-shares for the same number of days. Even if I put all of the rewards in and all of the principal, just can't do it. All right. And so again, those T-shares are how the system determines what your share of the payouts are. The share rate rises over time and never falls, ever. Never falls. And it takes more HEX to get 1 T-share every day. And so what this communicates for those who are interested in the HEX ecosystem is it's really a call to action. It makes it urgent to get in now and to do it big, early, and long, if you can accomplish all 3, you know. And it's hard to do that, but yes. And just as a demonstration piece, just to look at our next slide, these are the share rates. They're fairly similar on both chains, but these are the share rates for both Ethereum and PulseChain, showing how it's gone up in this red section in the beginning, from zero, from zero all the way up to where we are today in the 41,000 range. And so it's working as designed. One of the reasons I had put together, this methodology of kind of watching this, it has been because I wanted to verify that it works the way it says it works, right? So it's been going up and to the right. It rises over time. There's, more HEX is needed every day for people to keep their positions if that's what their goals are. And people do come with different goals. Meanwhile, when we look at the mining addresses, this is just from back from launch of PulseChain. We can see that we had a rise of addresses mining on PulseChain, which is in green for a period of time, but pretty much right away we started seeing a decrease on the number of addresses on Ethereum, and that is because of the shift, to the PulseChain. Most of the liquidity is on the PulseChain. Of course, gas was super high on the Ethereum side for a while. But then we saw a decline on PulseChain right up and we pretty much were declining on both PulseChain and Ethereum right up until the OA decided to stake. And you can see that marked on the chart here with this large line going vertical over the days that the OA decided to stake and had put in stakes. But since then, you can see that we have a rather decent decline on both chains in the number of T-shares, right? And also in the number of staker addresses or addresses staking. And so while that's going on, and this is very key, I think this next part is super key. Meanwhile, the holder addresses are going up and to the right. Now, sure, the Ethereum number is going up slower to the right, but the PulseChain addresses are going up and to the right much quicker. And now this is not log, so of course it looks pretty drastic, but I do see it going up and to the right. Let me pause there for a second.
Yeah.
To this question. Yep.
Yeah, quick question beyond all. What is the incentive to lock HEX now that the price is low and the yield is almost less than any other staking protocol? And what is your favorite line to onboard HEX on both sides?
Right. Well, I think that the incentive right now is, if you're a true believer, right, you've come to grips with HEX and you're interested in HEX, the incentive is, how do you have as much HEX as you can at the end? How do you have as much HEX at the end as you possibly can? And that is the only way to do that, is to get your stakes in, right? And then the other side of it is, what's the line for the onboards? I know it's not intuitive looking at some of the data. I mean, the data that I'm showing you is intuitive, but it truly is becoming scarce. And I think, unfortunately, like a lot of things in crypto, we got to see green candles first.
Yeah. I was going to say, a lot of people think the price is going to go up. I think that's a line for onboards.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's how it is. That's how it is. I think that's what we're going to be seeing. And so when we're looking at HEX, and so the question is, why use HEX? One of the primary reasons is it's you. Nobody else doing the work. It's built for long term. It's got proven uptime security. I mean, these are things we talk about all the time, but people coming in here and listening maybe for the first time, it's important to bring up, and it aligns with delayed gratification. You know, the idea of saving, and most importantly, some people might call them first principles when we talk about design, but when we talk about blockchain, you know, not your key is not your crypto. You know, and that is in alignment with that, you know, self custody, peer to peer, to the extent that we can have it. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have a few risks that are out there. We know market volatility is there right away. If somebody was going to criticize, they'd be like, yeah, but prices aren't up. You're right, they're not up. So there's volatility in the market, but you know, a cycle has tops and bottoms, and as Coffee pointed out, the cycle's got a cycle, right? So you can't just like assume things will never move. We're not mind readers. In this case, there's extremely low smart contract risk. Contracts audited, no admin keys, runs by itself. You can validate that yourself. You know, the other part of it is if you're looking for a quick, hey, I'm going to get my 1000x, perhaps it'll happen this time around. But really, to benefit, you got to go long term. You got to be thinking long term. And then the other thing, Max, that's really taken off for us has been this idea of ecosystem growth. I don't know if we could have envisioned it in the beginning. And I apologize, anybody I didn't get your project up here on this list, but you know, there are all sorts of protocols allow you to borrow from HEX in various ways, like Actuator if you're doing HSIs, like Hedron Nikos if you're doing HSIs. Like Flex if you're willing to deposit your HEX and you know, back a stable coin. You have reward tokens. You have staking, pool staking contracts like Stakehouse and Maximus DAO. Just so many different things, and who knows what people are going to come up with. There's probably a few more here that'd be very valuable to everybody that'll get rolled out. But you know, the progress continues, and people have been building, right? So I would say, hey, you know what? There are more tools coming. The future is very bright. I think we have a lot of innovative people. Coffee spoke to this a little bit. We got a ton of things that can be done and will be done, and we're watching that, of course. I mean, not everything might be to your personal flavor, but it's there. And then finally, you're still early. I mean, it won't, if we're 5 years in, but over 5 years in, literally we are still early, right? I mean, would it have made sense for me to have purchased Bitcoin in 2014? It would.